So if the camera pitches a fit and keeps turning off, then we'll simply ignore it. But we're hoping she pushes through. So for the audience today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a different style of podcast than maybe what they're used to. Today we're going to be doing a 2, maybe even a 3-part series, depending on how just passionate and rageful me and Ben feel on the topics at hand. But Ben, for the people listening, I really thought it would be valuable for them just to hear a little bit about you. Gotcha. I think you're a really interesting person, which is why I asked you onto the Entrenched podcast. And the premise of this podcast is Entrenched, where we dig our way out of mediocre mindsets. Right. And a lot of people don't even know, but there's multiple brand pieces attached to this podcast. So for example, I got my life coaching certification a couple of months ago. So I want to help people dig their way out of mediocre mindsets in their life and kind of coach them to a lifestyle that they're proud of. Right. In addition to that, I'm trying to build out the Entrenched a charity where we kind of help homeless people who are struggling. And then, of course, I'm even thinking about doing an entrenched marketing agency where we dig our way out of mediocre marketing. But I share all that just as a self-plug because those are some things I wanted the audience to hear just about the Entrenched brand and the Entrenched podcast. It's so much bigger than this podcast. Mm-hmm. So if you go to entrenchedbreakthrough.com, you'll see my website and you can learn more about that. Specifically with today's podcast, I'm joined by Ben. He's a fellow coworker, fellow brother in Christ, and so share with the people just. And what I would do, rather than just asking you point blank questions like where were you born, where do you come from, share from your heart, which you're really good at. Gotcha. You know, this audience probably listening to this has probably really heard of you before. Right. Tell them what you're passionate about. Tell them what you want them to know about you.
Sounds good. So my name is Benjamin Woods. Thank you for having me here, man.
Yeah.
It's a blessing being here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be amazing.
We're going to cover some great ground today.
Heck yeah, I'm all for it. But Benjamin Woods, I'm originally from Florida, South Florida. I say Miami sometimes because it's more known than Broward. But Broward is like the home. We get very competitive about that. But Broward County, I love the Lord. I truly honor like the version of myself that I have came to, and I give all the glory to God because of that. I'm very outgoing, I would think. I love doing acting. I'm an actor. I love acting. I love ministry, spreading the gospel of Christ, and people don't know this, but I freestyle. I'm pretty good at freestyling. Yeah.
Holy crap! See, you've never told me that
I
before.
just wanted to drop a little something here.
Putting it on the spot.
Yes, sir.
Turn up your mic just a smidge more for me. You're so soft spoken. The mic's just
I gotta let it get out
here.
there.
Now you're good.
I'm good.
Man, so are you gonna drop some bars then?
I'll be open for it. I really would be. I wouldn't mind at all.
Well, we'll settle in here. Maybe
okay.
we gotta. Specifically freestyling.
Yeah, freestyling. You'll give me a topic and I'll go in.
Man, I love raps, man.
Yeah. Cool,
Should I hit you with a beat over it when we do it?
Yeah.
Like a generic beat?
Let's do a little beat too.
Maybe we'll do that like completely separate from the podcast just for fun.
Yeah.
But
don't say nothing crazy, man. Yeah. It's a 50-50 chance with freestyles, bro. It's like, what? Where did that come from?
Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Man, well, let's dive into the reason why we're here today.
Sounds good.
Manhood. And manhood in America, manhood on a global scale, manhood from a biblical perspective, manhood from a family perspective, manhood from a leadership perspective. There's so many different kind of ways, I suppose, to break down even that word, manhood. What does it mean? How does it affect us? And I think there's a subculture of men, and if I was to speak for the majority of men in the world, so sorry, speak on your behalf, I think a lot of us feel like masculinity is kind of under attack. It can feel like the culture is very much trying to demasculate men, and they're trying to tell us, well, those strong character traits, yeah, they're a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
Hey, that dominating demeanor, that's a little bit too dominating. And it's interesting, as a man, I think a lot of men are struggling with an identity crisis. Who am I?
Right,
Who am I allowed to be in the premise of this current woke society?
Yeah.
And how do I establish a strong identity that I'm proud of?
Right.
So all those, I mean, we could talk for the next 6 hours. I know I just but I wanted to kind of summarize, I suppose, to you, because this is something that's fresh for me and Ben, to be clear to the audience. We've never discussed this. We've had many conversations, but manhood isn't something we've necessarily discussed. We might end up disagreeing on some points too.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think we seem pretty aligned in a lot of our worldviews. So I imagine there'll be a lot of common ground discussed. But for me, that's how I would frame.
Yeah.
I suppose what we're about to dive into. Yeah. So, but one of the things I'm trying to do is to have my I guess guest. There we go.
Yeah.
Kind of bring a topic, and this was something Ben said. You said, hey, let's talk about manhood. So I'm just going to open up the floor to you, kind of set the stage.
Yeah.
Why was this a topic you wanted to jump into in the first place? Why did it bring so much passion for you?
I truly feel manhood is, like how you said, you pointed it out, you hit it right on the nail. It's misunderstood in today's society. I feel like there's a level of masculinity that's like the standard, quote unquote, or it's a level of they're also trying to degrade it in a sense, bring it down from what the standard is supposed to be. I think it boils down to just a few components, major components, but nowadays I feel like it's viewed as like the strongest of the strongest of the strongest, when in actuality I feel like it comes from a place of vulnerability, of kindness, of honor, of firmness, of setting that standard and sticking to it, allowing yourself room for error, and it's honestly just being real with yourself in a sense, I think it's knowing what a man is supposed to do when it comes down to the role as husband and wife, being a provider, someone that takes care, look after. I feel like it's all these components that the world kind of nowadays tries to ball it up and say, here, this is what you have, and you can do way more options or move however you want with what we presented before you, and in reality it's black or white. It genuinely is. It's just this or that, but manhood is something that I believe the world needs more of a righteous understanding of, a righteous seeing of. We're made in God's image. And God's image was for us to literally kind of treat people how he treats us. I think that's like one of the best revelations I've ever gotten from it, to be as kind and gentle as he is with us, not like displaying the strength, but knowing that it's definitely there for when the measure comes. But I feel like a man is one that just shows the gentleness of, hey, no, I have compassion enough to cater to what's going on before me, like in a servant type of intention, but being able to cater to that out of love and, kindness, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control, all those things. Just being able to cater that and show that to an individual, Yeah, I guess that's like kind of my way of summarizing it.
Yeah.
All those components play with leadership, relationships, every aspect. But yeah, that's how I kind of like generalize it.
Yeah. Something that you seem to be focusing on there was really the softer side of manhood.
Yeah.
Or the servant side of manhood.
Right.
And so why do you focus on that?
Because I feel like the generation nowadays, or whatever the world is trying to show as far as manhood, it's misunderstood. And I point out that perspective because I feel like that's the perspective that would be able to be gravitated to and understood. For a fatherless generation, for a father-filled generation, it's the vulnerability of a person, a human. I think it all goes back to that. And then when it's specifically talking about a man's vulnerable side is a man's side that, you know, you get to, how to word it? I would say the vulnerable side is the passion, is like the parts that come from the heart, you know, and it's having self-control in a way of explaining or in a way of treating people through that vulnerability. You know what I mean? That's on the one side of it. Then there's this other side where it's like, okay, you're seeing my full dominance because sometimes it's needed. Like an ultimate frisbee. I'm not the best, but I will rage if I have to. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I stopped the trash at ultimate frisbee right now. Let me just get that out the way. But I think it's those components where it's just like, this is who I am, and who I am can possibly be a help to you, can be a comfort to you, or a leadership to you in a way of getting you through something that you possibly may need, or giving you guidance to show you how the ropes should be handled to get from point A to point B, grace to grace, you know. But I say on that specifically, like from a teaching perspective, because I feel we do have a lost generation.
Yeah.
We do have a lost world where there's young boys, young men that just don't have a clue of what's what, and they'll go off of the images that they're seeing and characters that's being portrayed, and it's like, it seems authentic, but is it from the heart? Is it from the standard of what the creation was supposed to be? You know what I mean? So that's why I kind of take it from that angle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's unpack something then. So
Okay.
something you keep referencing and that I want to get into is this whole idea around, you feel like men are being sold a bag of sour goods. Let's say they're being taught not the truest version of masculinity. Am I regurgitating that correctly?
Yes, correctly. Yeah.
So, what are they being taught? What do you see society trying to teach men?
That it's okay not to be firm on
Truth.
Yeah, truth. That's the best way to put it. Yeah. That it's okay to, you know, like more than what you're supposed to, or can I just be transparent?
No, we need.
Okay, cool.
So let me clarify something for you
Yeah.
and for the listeners of this podcast. So one, and this isn't a trap.
No,
I'm not
you're
trying to catch
good.
you.
You're
Have you
good.
ever listened to any of my episodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that hopefully you've taken away from it is I don't want to beat around the bush with anything.
I got you.
So let's cut to the heart of it. This is entrenched. We dig our way out of mediocre mindsets. So, if there's, if you have certain feelings about the way manhood is being attacked through sexuality, and how we're trying to, as a society, we're trying to kind of rip man's masculinity away from them by making them more feminine.
Right.
Let's dig into it.
I got you.
Oh,
good.
the lights went off. Oh, we're gonna pause the podcast for 1 second, and me and Ben will be right back.
Good.
So me and Ben, the lights just turned off because I had a breaker flip, and now we're wondering if the Lord is trying to stop us from doing this topic or not. But we're gonna proceed with boldness.
Let's do it.
But essentially, the premise of what I was trying to share is hold up 1 second. I'm gonna the premise of what I was trying to share really boils down to this, and it's this idea that, or the premise of this podcast is really built around, we want to ascend through life's challenges, and we want to dig our way out of mediocre mindsets, and the only way we can do that is through transparent conversation around really challenging topics.
Right.
So all of that to say, don't steady your hand, speak freely on any topic, and let's just get into it.
Right.
That was a long spiel for something that was super short.
Oh, good. But specifically today, feel like young men and young women, because of how much we're allowing society to have a chance to kind of switch their gender and do different things as far as, changing their identity of what it was supposed to be, of what God created it to be.
Yeah.
A lot of times it just honestly plays a domino effect on a whole generation, multiple generations. I think it just doesn't, there's a want or a longing for something that's not being filled right, a void, misunderstanding passed down from generation to generation to generation. And I feel like media and everything that's going on, that's presented before us, is presented in a way to kind of fill that gap.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
but it won't. And C.S.
Yes.
Lewis wrote, and I'm sorry to interject,
No,
but
you're good.
he wrote, if there's a desire that nothing on this earth can fill, then it must mean I was created for a different purpose.
Oh, good.
So with that, in that same vein, there's a lot of struggle in our current culture around what is the value of my life? What is the purpose of my life? Yeah. So we've transferred where in past generations value and purpose was found in Christ and in his view of us and in our relationship with him. Yeah. Now that value and purpose has been transferred over to sexuality. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing a lot in our culture and in manhood in general. So
right. Yeah. I 1,000% agree. And I feel like it's even to the point where when speaking on it, or even talking with someone that may see it oppositely from the way that we see it, out of love, it's even taken like, why are you coming at me, or why are you, trying to change who I am, or whatever the case may be, or the way a person may feel that does stand on that side. I feel like it's never viewed from the perspective of maybe I'm sharing something with you that, is my treasure. And if you view it from that perspective, you ultimately view it as a sign of love. It's like, okay, this person values what he's saying so much that he would rather go through the uncomfort of having this conversation with me for my potential growth, or for just something that he sees. I know it's out of love because he's confronting it straight on. Exactly. But rather it's like, nah, you're trying to do the most, bro. Or, I'm not going to make it. But,
well, and the reality is it all comes in the way, how are you saying what you're saying? Is it being said in love? Or is because a lot of Christians don't actually mean it in love. They have genuine distaste or disgust for someone of a different purpose, or someone who's struggling to find their place in the world. And I think a lot of people don't have an intellectual view of sexuality, or an intellectual view of what it is we're struggling with as a generation, as a whole, where we're trying to find our place in the world. And unfortunately, when you have a society of people that has developed so much luxury, the ability to, something that our audience needs to understand. Unfortunately, sexuality is a luxury. Yeah. And luxury beliefs start at the top of society, in the 1%, so to speak, and they trickle down. So here's a great example. Divorce. Yeah. Well, that's a luxury to get divorced. Yeah. It's a luxury because divorce can ruin someone financially. Yeah. You connect yourself with another person, you entangle yourself financially, you have responsibilities for children. Someone gets divorced, and then as our society is structured, the father carries the burden of the financial responsibility for the child in a divorce. And this isn't really tied to manhood, so we're rabbit trailing here, but it's a great topic in that this starts at the elite level. And then in society, of people who can afford divorce, of people who can get away with that and continue, and then it trickles down. But what it does is and this is apart from Christianity or faith. This is just economics.
Yeah.
It starts at the top, and then when it gets down to the middle class or the lower class, it ruins them.
Yeah.
It ruins them. They don't have the financial freedom that those people have. They don't have the same stability that those people have, or the way of living their life, and it can cripple an entire family units, and then that can weaken society as a whole. Much less the whole dynamic of absent fathers or absent mothers, or the need for a child to live in a stable environment in order to develop emotionally and intellectually as high as they actually can go. So then you take sexuality, for example. Well, why is sexuality such more of an issue now, or so much more of a topic of conversation now than it was, say, in the 1960s or in the 1800s? I'm sure there was people who struggled with their sexuality in the 1800s, and you might say, well, they didn't talk about it then because they would have been, burnt at the stake, or they would have been, it wasn't even allowed in that society. Right. But it's not even that it wasn't just allowed. Sure, there were gay men and gay women back in those times. It's not something that's, just new to the face of humanity.
Right.
But if you're struggling, if you don't know if you're going to eat tomorrow, if you don't know if you're going to make it through the night because you might freeze to death, if you don't know if this next drink of water is going to poison you, you're not worried about your sexuality. You're worried about, can I live tomorrow? So the idea that we even have a generation of people that even have the freedom to even think through what is my sexuality, and they have the time to ponder this, is an indication of how blessed we are as a society. But the more blessed a society becomes, the more idle man's hands become, the more damage they start to do on society as a whole, and on the generations, and on their families. So, like I said, I know that was a little bit of a segue, but luxury beliefs start with the 1%. They trickle their way down, and usually it's unsustainable beliefs for society as a whole. And by unsustainable, I mean they will weaken a society as a whole. And these beliefs start at the top level, and then they begin to trickle down, and they trickle down until they make their way to these lower class systems, and that's where they take their full negative effect. So I just think that's what we're seeing.
1,000%. You said through idolization we'll start to, it's because we're looking at man's hand, like as through the luxury that you're explaining. And I think that makes the point, like, very, very firm on, well, the Bible talks about how pride leads to destruction. And if we're looking at man and it's being in his hands, we see that because it's centered on the luxury that it is providing, we'll see what it ends up leading to, because it is being idolized. Like, oh, they said I could do this now, let me go ahead and do that. I'm intentionally pulling from what's being taught to me, instead of going to this place of, let me find my identity through the one that shows me my identity. Going deeper to like a vulnerable state. You know what I mean? I'm trying to tie it around some type of way, but
no, you're headed down the right path.
I have it in my mind, but through the vulnerable state of, I truly feel vulnerability plays so much, because it's weird. It's like the root of whatever you need to build upon. It's like, okay, this was an issue when I was younger, or this is something that made me feel this way when I was younger, and this is the reason someone is probably looking at what's being brought before them and finding comfort in it, because it wasn't handled when it was younger, like when it was the younger version of themselves. It's like, okay, through these vulnerability moments, through these moments of just not being understood, or whatever the case may be, attacking it straight on is first the manly quality. You have to approach it head on. You have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to stand on. This is something that happened to me, and I want to figure out what it is that's going to make it better for my heart. For me not to try and fill up a void, but I want it to be not a momentary feeling, but a fullness of the feeling. and then going from there, it's like building upon that and starting to let your character form and different things. It'll mold you to the version of you're the man that you're supposed to be. So I 1,000% agree. It's definitely a luxury as well. Definitely. Just a lot of young adults, they truly grab on what they're seeing, and they're like, and there's so much more peace about it now, you know.
Well, and what you focus on
Mm-hmm.
grows, right? So as we focus on this,
Mm-hmm.
as we obsess over sexuality becomes more of something that someone would even consider.
Yeah.
So for example, me, I've never in my life considered my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I've just always been a man.
Right.
And that's how I was born.
Right.
That's how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought to myself, like let me really think through this. Do I have any feminine? I actually have very many feminine qualities. And in fact, there's a joke in my family, a running joke, which doesn't insult me at all, that I think I may have started, which is if any of us was to be gay, it would be me, and I'm just, because I have these feminine qualities at times, and I dress the most flamboyant of all the men in our family. I care about the way I dress, which you do as well, but in like the manliest of realms,
I understand.
that's perceived as feminine to even consider, it's just like a white t-shirt,
right.
Jeans, boots. That's what a man wears.
Yeah,
right?
I understand.
So the fact that I even care per se, but then more than that, it really comes down to, so because sexuality was never something that was discussed, because it's never something I saw on the screen, it was never something I thought about.
Right.
I just accepted who I was, and I'm a very stable young man. I have my family I provide for. I have my communities I try and build. I have my responsibility that I try and bear up under.
Right.
But I worry for my son because he's going to live a different life than me. I will be unable to shield him from the world. As hard as I try. So my goal, and this is, once again, a small segue, but my goal as a father is to equip him to handle the challenges of the world, not to protect him from it.
Right.
Sure, there'll be a season of protection when he's super young, and it's not like he's going to be 3 and I'm like, I can't protect him. He must, obviously I'm not an idiot.
I understand.
But my greatest gift I can give him is, you will be challenged in your sexuality. You will ask yourself questions that I never even had to ask myself. And here's the answers, and here's how you find, and here's how you intellectually think, and here's how you can gain emotional intelligence. And that's how you raise a manly man to combat these questions in these societies that are coming at them, or that's how I would. But the reality is I'm faced with a challenge that my parents didn't have.
Right.
And we're being faced as a challenge as young Christian adults to raise children in society. They've never had to. There's no roadmap to this for us. How do we navigate these really troublesome, challenging times? If he goes to public school, he's going to be faced with them and trying their hardest to indoctrinate him with his sexuality. How do I combat that? How do I create an environment where he can be bold and firm in what he knows is true, but yet gracious and kind to the differing perspectives that the world is trying to bring him? And then how does he reason in his mind around truth and around firmness? So we're actually getting close to 30 minutes here. So I think in this first episode, we've done a really good job kind of wrapping up what manhood isn't. And we've discussed some of the problems of manhood, but what we haven't gotten into is what is manhood? And then how do we solve for these problems? So really great work on this first episode, I think. I'm glad for everyone who's tuned in. So come in the next couple of weeks and tune into the second episode where we're going to discuss what is manhood from a biblical perspective, from a physical perspective, from a logical perspective, and what are the problems we're facing? How do we address these problems as men? So I think it's going to be great. Is there any tack you want to summon up in what we have discussed for our audience?
Yeah, definitely. And the world will continue to give us an example of what it believes the luxury of what manhood would be. But standing on what you know, which is the identity of Christ and what He has created a man to be, even a woman. That's what we must stand on as we go down this journey of manhood, of womanhood, whatever it is. But that's what we must stand on, the true identity of what the human man was supposed to be intended for. And we'll talk about more of it next time on the next episode. Yes, sir.
Solid. We'll see y'all in a couple of weeks when the next episode comes out. Thanks for coming today, Ben. I'm excited to dive into some deeper topics the next round. This was a good intro.
Yes, sir.
Intro level to manhood. We'll get a little bit deeper in round 2.
I'm all for it.
Y'all have a great week. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Come next time for the freestyle.
Oh, the freestyle's dropping.
Yes, sir.
In version 2.
Let's do it.